an affordable place to live. It is the core component of any community, but the truth is, calling Center County home is getting to be much more difficult. Decreasing availability and unaffordable new construction force many of our neighbors to find housing far away from jobs and services or face financial hardships, with households paying more than they can afford on housing costs. Why should you be concerned? Because home matters. When the housing market isn't balanced and the supply of decent, affordable, and accessible homes is inadequate, our economic well-being is affected. The bottom line is employers need places for their employees to live.
Affordable housing is critical for economic development because people need to have a place to live, to work in this community, and the kinds of jobs we bring in have to accommodate all kinds of people. They have to be folks who are working at minimum wage or slightly more, to folks obviously who are making six-figure salaries. But the affordability of housing is not simply a function of what you make, it's a function of the kind of neighborhood you want to be in and the kind of schools you want your kids to go to. And if we don't have affordable housing or comfortable affordable housing, then maybe a company doesn't relocate here because it's concerned about whether their employees would have a place to live. So the positive is affordable housing is good for everybody because we need a breadth of people living in this community to be able to provide the kinds of economy that we want. We want to have folks who do service jobs. We want to be able to go out to dinner. We want to be able to have all of that. And if we make it comfortable for those folks to live in the community, not only are they here working, but they're also part of the community.
Local businesses suffer the consequences of high housing costs. Running a small business means operating on a small budget. Some businesses cannot afford to pay their workers a living wage, making it difficult for employees to pay their housing costs. In order for these businesses to hire and retain employees who can live here, we need a variety of housing options in our communities to sustain local businesses and our local economies. When local businesses suffer, we all pay the price of having to drive further for our goods and services.
From our own work experience, we should be able to admit just how important attitude and state of mind is to work performance. How can we then expect that worker so vital to our own success to maintain a high level of competency coming from and going home to anything less than affordable, safe, and reasonably comfortable housing?
Affordable housing is important to the health of any community and fosters more inclusive neighborhoods, benefiting everyone. Without affordable housing, the community becomes exclusive.
Well, I think in thinking in terms of affordable housing or workforce housing, I think you need to think about the folks that live in your community or that you come in contact with on a day-to-day basis. And they're going to be clerks at stores, they're going to be teachers or nurses, even police. And I think that that makes for a well-rounded community, and it's important to have a well-rounded community in order to have a functional community. I think the benefit really is a more inclusive community, and I think it's important when you think about having a variety of folks that live in a community from various socioeconomic levels, if you will. You don't want to get too top-heavy in a community. I mean, it's easy to do, or it's easy to see how that can happen. And I think that we have a community where we may be in some danger of that occurring. You need a balance, and I think that affordable housing actually helps to create more of that balance, and that's important. It's a little disingenuous in some respects of people to say, well, not in my backyard, because they're already in your backyard, and they're already here, and they're already among us, and you never notice them any other way. They're not so different to live beside.
The high cost of rental housing, coupled with transportation costs, stresses household budgets, leaving very little money left over to pay for other necessities. This undue strain has a broader reach, impacting our communities in many ways.
The number one problem for people who need help having a stable financial environment is housing cost. Sometimes it's 75% of their net income, and that is a huge burden to bear in this community. Some folks have a skill level that are going to keep them at what you and I might call an entry-level position, but many people are starting at those entry-level positions and they need to be able to save for the future, just like we do. They need to be able to save for retirement, for emergencies, for car repairs, all of those things that can go wrong in our lives. And if they're paying the majority of their income to pay for a place to rent, they can't do that. They don't have anything to cushion them against crises in their lives. You know, a lot of people, they hear affordable housing and they think things like Cabrini Green or the ghetto, or that's not what we're talking about. We're talking just let's integrate some housing stock into the county where people who are at the lower income scale can have a very comfortable or a comfortable lifestyle instead of having to kind of make it check to check or really be worried about how they're going to pay for heat that year because everything's going to their rent or to their mortgage.
Affordable housing means more stability for parents and children in a community. Establishing relationships with neighbors, teachers, and other students gives children a better opportunity to succeed.
Well, last year what impacted me the most was that I had students who had to move out of my classroom in the middle of the year, and that's very disruptive to the whole classroom, especially to those students and their education, but also to other students in the classroom who've made friends and who, we become a family in a classroom, so when we have to say goodbye to somebody, it affects all of us. From a teacher's point of view in the classroom, I think one of the things that I noticed the most was that our classroom's becoming more and more homogeneous, less diverse than it ever has been. And that upsets me because I think all students benefit from the diversity, whether it's race, socioeconomic class, any of those things. I think all students benefit from learning acceptance of others and becoming part of a family with all those differences. And so as we start to have less housing for those families and we're moving them out of the area, we're becoming more homogeneous, which I don't think is real. I don't think it's helpful for students to grow up in that kind of environment. To consider ourselves to be a community, we have to open our backyards, we have to open our doors and our hearts to everybody.
Home matters to our neighbors, our community, and ourselves. Stay informed. Let your voice be heard at municipal meetings and through personal contacts and conversations.
Home matters.
Home matters.
Home matters.